Speaking of presents, our present to Ukrainians was the wall. And Vladimir Putin said that Avangard missile system testing was another wonderful New Year present for the whole country. Do you remember the system that was claimed not to exist by everyone? They said that it was impossible to create one. They say that they were about to stop developing it few years ago, but it looks like the president decided to keep going, and here we are. They say that while meeting with the president, the chief designer asked to give them one more chance. The chance was given, and so the system has passed the flight tests already. It looks like it wasn't that simple. We understand that a complex weapon is difficult to develop, produce and test, however, the tests have been passed, which has been reported, and as far as I understand, that's the way it is. I mentioned the Avangard this morning. This should be important for the Americans, and it's also an important answer here inside the country to those saying during the past few years that we are being involved into another arms race that will ruin us. Just like the Soviet Union, we will go up in smoke. Though me personally don't agree that the arm race is the main reason of what has happened to the Soviet Union. People are talking though. Once again we hear about guns for a butter, and so on. As for me, the optimal solution would be having the guns and the butter, or using the guns to get some butter for say. There won't be no butter without guns, let's keep it real. So we demonstrated the way to solve the issues symmetrically. This is what they were talking about a lot, and now it's implemented. We discussed this with our military expert Mr. Murachovsky, who was the guest of our show. He described this in a few words. Let me remind. Americans withdrew from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, which made a political scandal at the time. Then they invested huge money into anti-missile system development and placement of the land, the sea and other kinds of systems. The aim is to place the anti-missile system parts in the countries of Eastern Europe, closer to the borders of Russia. So they have already invested billions and billions of dollars into this and will keep investing. We don't have this money, and even if we do, we won't invest it as we are unable to. Regarding the Avangard system, its features allow to overcome any anti-missile system nowadays. American or European one, you name it. Let's say American, as the rest of the systems are now a serious problem to us. It overcomes any of those. As far as I understand, even the S-300 and S-400 systems we sell abroad, its trajectory is non-ballistic, and all the systems detect the trajectory based on the ballistic principle. Also, its speed is extreme. The testing that took place in the presence of the president showed the speed of 27 Machs. 1 Mach is equal to the speed of sound, so it's the speed of sound times 27. Some say it can go up to 30. Also, its ability to maneuver in height and in direction, in pitch, which means up and down, and in course, which means left and right. This makes it invulnerable, and Americans seem to be forced to agree upon that, as we see such publications already. And the reaction to the news about this testing is also noticed. It comes from American military experts, first of all. The reaction is quite pessimistic. To make a long story short, they think that there is no protection at the moment. No protection from this weapon. Americans have nothing. I'm not saying any of their lies, I mean even the Americans themselves. No protection. This means that after the testing of the system nowadays, just think about it, the United States are helpless in front of the possible strike from Russian side. Helpless. because American anti-missile systems protecting the territory of the United States are unable to intercept and to resist Avangard. So basically, after the system testing, we may say that the US sky is totally open. We can launch the system and they won't be able to do anything about it. I consider this good news for us and bad news for Americans. It may be good in common for keeping the balance of power. They need to understand that pressing on Russia makes no sense. They say about sanctions here and there. Sanctions' influence on Russian economics is negative, which is a problem. But, first of all, this influence is not critical as we may see. Also, during these 5 years, Americans made sure that we weren't going to, let's say, give up and get under them. This brings us several questions. First of all, ordinary Americans may get scared. They may feel scared, and I think that we need to do our best to bring this idea to them. And they will pass it to the politicians, right? Correct. Americans, you are not protected at the moment. You may get it anytime. Let's say a nuclear missile. And no anti-missile systems, no military, no $725 billion of your military budget, no Pentagon, no Star Wars and no Hollywood can protect you from this. This is a guaranteed, terrible and mass termination, and you are at risk. You are totally helpless now. At this exact moment, Americans, Europeans, NATO and all its allies are. You are totally helpless and can do nothing. All of the weapons you are using as the anti-missile systems now are totally useless. So, actually you're still alive because we still negotiate and the people in Kremlin are sane. That was the first one, and here comes the second one. The second question is a reasonable person may ask. One needs to understand that it's impossible to speak with a country of such a potential using the language of ultimatums. It's impossible to humiliate and to vilify. It's better to make a deal with such country. Making a deal is better. And now the third one. All of these sanctions, sectorial packages and the rest, sanctions here and sanctions there, it doesn't work with Russia. At least it's obvious at this point of time that it's not going to back down on this matter in front of the US and its allies. Personally, I think that any sane politician, and not only a politician, but also a military, an expert, or just a simple everyman in his right mind needs to ask himself these three questions and to understand that negotiating is way more correct and safe. Sure, American military forces will ask for another bunch of money. They will sure intensify their developments in this field. Sooner or later they will come up with some answer to this weapon, yet it will take years. Apparently we're talking years, not days or weeks or months. It may take a pretty long time. Also, even when they come up with something, it won't provide a 100% protection. And finally, it means that any American's investments will always find a suitable nut, which in fact may be way cheaper than they can imagine. So this race is senseless. It makes no sense. This is what, as I believe, any reasonable politician should. As a result of this testing, I mean, a lot of people think that this is not that important, like what's up with dollar and euro, what's going on there. In fact, these news are not just insignificant, it's quite important. Let me explain. Today all other countries except for Russia are actually exposed to Avangard system that has just been tested. All of them. From Honduras and to the US, including all kinds of NATO, European values and the rest. That said, the development and implementation of the system testing took way less funds Pentagon spends on its anti-missile things and the rest. This is the optimal way. We should apply it in our economics, by the way. It would make good, as we said many times before. And I repeat that all this doesn't solve the question of the social and economical structure and the problems and so on that are not being discussed. I've already told earlier today that we need at least some kind of a wide discussion to find this optimal model, even an asymmetrical model if you wish, for our economical development. Unfortunately, those willing to discuss, just like me, are not empowered, and those empowered don't will to discuss. It's no good actually. I don't need power. I'm not striving to possess it, as I don't want to scheme against anyone. But we need to understand that with this attitude, being effective, having our goals and targets, understanding that no dogmas are needed here, yet supplied with the resources, we can achieve the result. And when the economics is ruled dogmatized, neoliberal and ultra-monetarian way, when the people in charge of this don't want to listen to no one, then we're in trouble. So on the first hand, providing the protection is the main condition for solving any inner problems. If you don't provide safety, it's senseless to try to deal with any other problem, as other people will determine those. On the other hand, when you provide the safety, you'll need to use the same effective way for economics management, make reform popular. This makes a super problem, because they keep scaring us with this and that reform being unpopular and so on. Unpopular reforms make the approval rating fall. We had Mr. Fedorov here with us earlier this morning. He is the chief of Russian Public Opinion Research Center. I must say that the numbers he brought were disappointing. In the year, regarding the approval and the social state of Russians in general, I connect this directly with the unpopular reforms of all kinds, and it threatens the stability. And actually, I think that this weapon that can overcome even Avangard system is what Americans count on. They want to destabilize the country, so don't give them a reason. Regarding Avangard, I repeat myself, this is very serious. It's no cartoons as was said here. And many were like joking and laughing like Putin showed us some tunes. These are no tunes, my dear. It is what it is, the F letter, as they said in the movie. So that's just how this goes.